Question 1. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting software-defined storage (SDS) solutions to enhance agility and scalability within their data centers. When considering the implementation of a new SDS solution, which of the following approaches best ensures a smooth transition and minimizes operational disruption? Option A. Implementing the SDS solution in a limited, isolated test environment without validating its performance or integration with critical production systems. Option B. Prioritizing the deployment of the SDS solution to gain immediate access to its new features, addressing any integration issues as they arise during production. Option C. Relying solely on the SDS vendor's provided implementation guide and assuming full compatibility with the current data center environment. Option D. Conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes the proposed SDS solution's compatibility with existing network infrastructure, storage protocols, and application dependencies, and developing a detailed integration and rollback plan. The correct answer is D. Conducting a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes the proposed SDS solution's compatibility with existing network infrastructure, storage protocols, and application dependencies, and developing a detailed integration and rollback plan. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing new data center infrastructure, such as advanced storage solutions, necessitates a thorough impact assessment. This is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the potential benefits of new technology against its risks and costs, while ensuring compliance with evolving industry standards and potential regulatory considerations. Though this exam focuses on technical implementation, the principle of due diligence applies. A failure to adequately assess the impact can lead to operational disruptions, security vulnerabilities, and inefficient resource allocation, all of which have downstream business consequences. The challenge lies in anticipating all potential ramifications, from performance degradation to compatibility issues with existing systems, and developing mitigation strategies. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of the proposed infrastructure changes. This includes analyzing the potential impact on existing applications, network performance, security posture, and operational workflows. It requires engaging with stakeholders across different IT domains, networking, storage, security, applications, to gather diverse perspectives and identify potential conflicts or dependencies. Documenting these findings and developing a clear plan for integration, testing, and rollback, if necessary, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of robust IT project management and risk mitigation, ensuring that the implementation proceeds smoothly and achieves its intended objectives without negatively impacting the business. While specific regulations are not the primary focus of 300-165, the underlying principle of responsible and well-planned infrastructure deployment is paramount. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with implementation based solely on vendor claims or a limited understanding of the existing environment. This bypasses the critical impact assessment phase, leading to potential unforeseen issues. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility, as it prioritizes speed over thoroughness and risks negatively impacting the organization. Another incorrect approach is to focus only on the technical specifications of the new infrastructure without considering its integration with the broader data center ecosystem. This overlooks crucial dependencies and potential performance bottlenecks, which can result in operational failures and a failure to meet business requirements. This approach is professionally deficient because it lacks a holistic view of the data center's function. A third incorrect approach is to defer the impact assessment to the implementation phase, treating it as a reactive troubleshooting exercise. This is a reactive and inefficient strategy that can lead to costly delays and significant disruptions. Fails to proactively identify and address risks, which is a fundamental aspect of professional IT management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and systematic approach to infrastructure changes. This involves 1. Defining clear objectives for the proposed implementation. 2. Conducting a thorough impact assessment covering technical, operational, and security aspects. 3. Engaging relevant stakeholders for input and buy-in. 4. Developing a detailed implementation plan, including testing, rollback procedures, and post-implementation monitoring. 5. Documenting all findings, decisions, and plans. This structured decision-making process ensures that implementations are well-informed, risks are managed, and the organization's IT environment remains stable and efficient. Question 2. Examination of the data shows a critical network device in the data center has experienced a failure impacting a core service. The immediate business requirement is to restore service within the hour to avoid significant financial loss. However, the standard procedure for replacing such a device involves a multi-day approval process for procuring a new, fully configured unit and a scheduled maintenance window. A temporary workaround involving a less secure, unpatched legacy device is technically feasible and could restore service within the hour, but it carries known security risks and deviates from the organization's established security baseline and U.S. federal compliance requirements for data integrity. Option A. Initiate an emergency procurement process for a new, fully configured device that bypasses the standard approval and scheduling, aiming to restore service within the hour while maintaining security. Option B. Proceed with the temporary workaround using the legacy device without informing the security team or documenting the risks, prioritizing service restoration above all else. Option C. Immediately implement the temporary workaround using the legacy device to restore service within the hour, and then initiate the standard procurement and configuration process for the approved replacement device, documenting the temporary measure and its associated risks. Option D. Refuse to implement any workaround and insist on adhering strictly to the multi-day approval and scheduled maintenance window for the new device, accepting the immediate financial losses. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement the temporary workaround using the legacy device to restore service within the hour, and then initiate the standard procurement and configuration process for the approved replacement device, documenting the temporary measure and its associated risks. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, balancing the immediate need for service restoration with the long-term implications of security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in making a rapid, informed decision under pressure, where a misstep could lead to significant security breaches, regulatory penalties, or prolonged service outages. The need for careful judgment is paramount because the chosen path directly impacts the integrity of the data center infrastructure and the organization's adherence to its security policies and any applicable U.S. federal regulations governing data handling and infrastructure security. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, risk-based decision-making process that aligns with established security principles and regulatory expectations. By involving the security team and adhering to established incident response procedures, the organization demonstrates a commitment to a controlled and documented resolution. This approach ensures that any deviation from standard operating procedures is authorized, understood, and mitigated, thereby minimizing the risk of unintended consequences and maintaining auditability. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible system management expected under U.S. federal regulations that mandate robust security controls and incident response capabilities for critical infrastructure. An incorrect approach that bypasses established security protocols and incident response procedures is professionally unacceptable. Such an approach risks introducing vulnerabilities, failing to properly document the incident and its resolution, and potentially violating U.S. federal regulations that require timely reporting of security incidents and adherence to approved remediation steps. For instance, implementing a workaround without proper security review could inadvertently create a backdoor or expose sensitive data, leading to significant compliance failures and potential legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach, such as delaying the decision to avoid immediate scrutiny, can exacerbate the problem, leading to extended downtime and increased risk of data compromise, which is contrary to the proactive security posture mandated by regulatory frameworks. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes 1. Immediate containment and assessment of the incident's impact. 2. Consultation with relevant stakeholders, including security and compliance teams. 3. Evaluation of potential solutions against established security policies and regulatory requirements. 4. Selection of the most secure and compliant remediation path, even if it requires more time. And 5. Thorough documentation of the incident, decision-making process, and resolution. This structured approach ensures that decisions are not only effective in resolving the immediate issue, but also sustainable and compliant in the long term. Question 3. Performance analysis shows a consistent increase in application response times within a specific segment of the data center, impacting end-user experience. The infrastructure includes Cisco Nexus switches, UCS servers, and NetApp storage arrays. Which of the following troubleshooting approaches best aligns with industry best practices for diagnosing and resolving such an issue in a production environment? Option A. Immediately initiate a full network device reboot sequence for all core switches in the affected segment to clear potential transient issues. Option B. Begin by analyzing application-level logs and performance counters on the affected servers, correlating them with network interface statistics and traffic flow data from the core switches. Option C. Assume the issue is related to storage performance and proceed with storage array diagnostics and potential firmware updates without further investigation into network or compute layers. Option D. Focus solely on increasing the bandwidth of the affected network links, as increased traffic is the most probable cause of performance degradation. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a full network device reboot sequence for all core switches in the affected segment to clear potential transient issues. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, where performance metrics indicate a deviation from expected behavior. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the performance degradation without disrupting ongoing services or introducing new risks. It requires a systematic approach, leveraging available tools and knowledge of the data center infrastructure, while adhering to operational best practices and any relevant Cisco guidelines for the 300-165 exam. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly, coupled with the potential impact on business operations, necessitates careful judgment and a structured troubleshooting methodology. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a methodical investigation that begins with validating the observed performance metrics against established baselines and expected behavior. This is followed by a deep dive into the relevant layers of the data center infrastructure, starting with the most probable causes based on the symptoms. For instance, if latency is observed, examining network device logs, interface statistics, and traffic patterns would be a logical first step. Understanding the interdependencies within the data center, compute, storage, network, is crucial. The approach should prioritize non-disruptive troubleshooting methods, such as passive monitoring and log analysis, before considering any active testing that might impact services. This aligns with best practices for maintaining service availability and minimizing operational risk. Adherence to Cisco's recommended troubleshooting methodologies, often found in their documentation and training materials for the 300-165 exam, would guide this process. Incorrect approaches analysis. An incorrect approach would be to immediately jump to conclusions or implement changes without a thorough understanding of the problem. For example, randomly reconfiguring network devices or restarting services without isolating the issue could exacerbate the problem or introduce new ones, violating operational stability principles. Another failure would be to ignore the observed performance metrics, assuming they are transient or inaccurate, which could lead to prolonged degradation and significant business impact. Furthermore, implementing solutions based on anecdotal evidence or past experiences without verifying their applicability to the current situation is unprofessional and risky. Ethically, professionals are expected to act with due diligence and competence, which includes a structured and evidence-based approach to problem solving. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured troubleshooting framework. This typically involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the symptoms and scope of the issue. 2. Information gathering. Collect relevant data, logs, and performance metrics. 3. Hypothesis generation. Formulate potential causes based on the gathered information. 4. Hypothesis testing. Systematically test each hypothesis using appropriate tools and techniques, prioritizing non-disruptive methods. 5. Solution implementation. Once the root cause is identified, implement the most effective and least disruptive solution. 6. Verification and documentation. Confirm the issue is resolved and document the process and resolution for future reference. This systematic approach ensures efficiency, minimizes risk, and promotes continuous improvement. Question 4. The control framework reveals that while the data center has implemented basic physical security measures and network segmentation, A recent integration of a new cloud-based analytics platform has introduced potential vulnerabilities. Which of the following risk assessment approaches would best address the potential for cascading failures and emergent threats within this evolving data center environment? Option A. Focus the risk assessment solely on the on-premises data center components, as the cloud platform is managed by a third party and its security is outside the organization's direct control. Option B. Perform a superficial review of the new platform's documentation to identify any explicitly stated security risks without deep diving into integration points. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive threat modeling exercise that maps data flows between the on-premises data center and the cloud platform, identifying potential attack vectors and single points of failure across the integrated infrastructure. Option D. Rely on the vendor's security certifications for the cloud platform, assuming their internal risk assessment adequately covers the integrated environment. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive threat modeling exercise that maps data flows between the on-premises data center and the cloud platform, identifying potential attack vectors and single points of failure across the integrated infrastructure. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center risk assessment, balancing the need for robust security controls with the practicalities of implementation and operational impact. The challenge lies in identifying risks that are not immediately obvious and ensuring that the assessment process is comprehensive enough to capture potential vulnerabilities arising from interconnected systems. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to avoid both over-engineering solutions that are cost-prohibitive or operationally disruptive, and under-engineering solutions that leave critical assets exposed. The correct approach involves a systematic and layered risk assessment methodology that considers the entire data center infrastructure, including physical, network, and application layers, as well as the interdependencies between them. This aligns with best practices for data center security and compliance, which emphasize a holistic view of risk. By identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, and then evaluating the likelihood and impact of those threats materializing, organizations can prioritize mitigation efforts effectively. This proactive and structured approach ensures that resources are allocated to address the most significant risks, thereby enhancing the overall security posture and resilience of the data center. This aligns with general principles of IT governance and risk management, which are implicitly expected within the scope of implementing data center infrastructure, even without specific U.S. regulatory mandates being explicitly cited for this exam. An incorrect approach would be to focus solely on known, high-profile threats without considering emerging or less obvious risks, such as those arising from the integration of new technologies or the potential for cascading failures. Failure to conduct a thorough and forward-looking assessment can lead to significant security gaps. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize cost savings over effective risk mitigation, leading to the selection of controls that are insufficient to address identified risks. This can result in regulatory noncompliance and potential financial or reputational damage. Furthermore, neglecting the interdependencies between different data center components during risk assessment is a critical failure. A vulnerability in one system can have a disproportionate impact if it affects other interconnected systems, a risk that a siloed assessment would miss. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the organization's risk appetite and tolerance. This is followed by a comprehensive risk identification process, which includes threat modeling, vulnerability scanning, and asset inventory. Subsequently, risks are analyzed and evaluated based on their likelihood and potential impact. Finally, mitigation strategies are developed, implemented, and continuously monitored. This iterative process ensures that risk management remains a dynamic and integral part of data center operations. Question 5. Analysis of a critical business unit's urgent request for enhanced data processing capabilities, which requires significant changes to the existing data center infrastructure, presents a complex stakeholder management challenge. The business unit is under pressure to meet new market demands and has identified specific performance metrics they need to achieve within a tight deadline. However, the IT infrastructure team is concerned about the potential impact on overall system stability, security posture, and adherence to current operational standards and U.S. regulatory compliance frameworks. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation from a professional and compliant perspective? Option A. Prioritize the business unit's request by reallocating existing IT resources from other less critical projects without a formal change management process to expedite the implementation. Option B. Lightly decline the business unit's request, citing current infrastructure limitations and the inability to accommodate new demands without a complete overhaul, suggesting they explore alternative external solutions. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the business unit's requirements, evaluate the proposed solution's technical feasibility, security implications, and compliance with relevant U.S. regulations, and then develop a phased implementation plan in collaboration with all stakeholders. Option D. Immediately implement the proposed solution as requested by the business unit to meet their urgent deadline, deferring any detailed security or compliance reviews until after the initial deployment. The correct answer is D. Immediately implement the proposed solution as requested by the business unit to meet their urgent deadline, deferring any detailed security or compliance reviews until after the initial deployment. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center infrastructure implementation, balancing the immediate needs of a critical business unit with the long-term strategic goals and resource constraints of the organization. The challenge lies in navigating competing priorities, managing stakeholder expectations, and ensuring that technical decisions align with both operational requirements and overarching compliance frameworks. Careful judgment is required to avoid short-sighted solutions that could lead to future technical debt, security vulnerabilities, or non-compliance with relevant U.S. regulations governing data privacy and infrastructure security. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough assessment of the business unit's requirements against the existing infrastructure's capabilities and the organization's strategic roadmap. This involves engaging with the business unit to understand their specific needs, while also consulting with IT governance, security, and compliance teams. The justification for this approach lies in its adherence to best practices for IT governance and risk management, which are implicitly supported by U.S. regulatory frameworks like HIPAA for healthcare data or SOX for financial data that mandate robust data protection and system integrity. By ensuring that any proposed solution is technically sound, secure, scalable, and compliant, this approach minimizes risk and maximizes the long-term value of the infrastructure investment. It aligns with the principle of due diligence required by many U.S. regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate demand without considering broader implications would be professionally unacceptable. For example, a hasty implementation of a solution that bypasses standard security protocols or fails to integrate with existing monitoring and management systems would create significant regulatory and ethical failures. This could lead to violations of data breach notification laws, e.g., state-specific breach laws, failure to meet audit requirements mandated by SOX, or compromise the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of sensitive data, which are core tenets of many U.S. data protection regulations. Another incorrect approach might involve overcommitting resources without proper planning, leading to project delays and potential noncompliance with service-level agreements (SLAs) that could have contractual or regulatory implications. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the business need. Clearly define the requirements and expected outcomes from the business unit. 2. Assess current state. Evaluate existing infrastructure capabilities, limitations, and compliance posture. 3. Identify risks and compliance gaps. Proactively identify potential security, operational, and regulatory risks associated with various solutions. 4. Explore solution options. Research and evaluate potential technical solutions, considering scalability, security, cost, and integration. 5. Consult stakeholders. Engage with all relevant stakeholders, including business units, IT operations, security, legal, and compliance. 6. Develop a phased implementation plan. Outline a clear roadmap for deployment, testing, and ongoing management, ensuring compliance checks at each stage. 7. Document decisions and rationale. Maintain thorough documentation of the decision-making process, including risk assessments and compliance justifications. Question 6. System analysis indicates that a project team is evaluating different network segmentation strategies for a new data center deployment. One proposed strategy involves a simpler, less resource-intensive configuration that offers immediate cost savings but may limit future flexibility and introduce potential security complexities. Another strategy, while requiring a higher initial investment, leverages advanced Cisco technologies for granular control and enhanced security. Stakeholders are pushing for the cost-saving option, which approach best aligns with the principles of implementing robust and future-proof data center infrastructure as per industry best practices. Option A. Implement the advanced Cisco technologies for granular control and enhanced security, even with a higher initial investment, after a thorough technical evaluation of its long-term benefits and alignment with Cisco's recommended architectures. Option B. Prioritize the solution that is most familiar to the existing IT team, regardless of its technical suitability or adherence to Cisco's best practices, to minimize training costs. Option C. Adopt a hybrid approach by implementing the simpler configuration and deferring the advanced features until future budget cycles, without a clear plan for their eventual integration. Option D. Select the simpler, less resource-intensive configuration to achieve immediate cost savings, as requested by stakeholders, without extensive technical validation of its long-term implications. The correct answer is A. Implement the advanced Cisco technologies for granular control and enhanced security, even with a higher initial investment, after a thorough technical evaluation of its long-term benefits and alignment with Cisco's recommended architectures. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center infrastructure projects, balancing the immediate need for cost savings with the long-term implications of technical debt and potential security vulnerabilities. Stakeholders, particularly those focused on financial metrics, may prioritize solutions that appear cheaper upfront. However, a responsible infrastructure implementation requires a forward-looking perspective that considers total cost of ownership, operational efficiency, and compliance with industry best practices and potential regulatory requirements. Though this exam focuses on technical implementation, the underlying principles of due diligence and risk management are paramount. The challenge lies in effectively communicating the value of a more robust, albeit initially more expensive, solution to stakeholders who may not fully grasp the technical nuances or long-term risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough technical evaluation that prioritizes solutions aligning with established Cisco best practices for data center design and implementation, as covered in the 300-165 exam. This includes assessing the proposed solution against criteria such as scalability, performance, security, manageability, and adherence to vendor recommendations. For instance, if the scenario involves network segmentation, the best practice would be to implement it using technologies like VLAN and access control lists, ACL, or more advanced solutions like microsegmentation if the infrastructure supports it, rather than a simpler, less secure method. This approach represents best professional practice because it ensures the data center infrastructure is built on a solid, reliable, and secure foundation, minimizing future operational issues, security breaches, and the need for costly rework. It demonstrates a commitment to delivering a high-quality, sustainable solution that meets current and future business needs, aligning with the principles of responsible engineering and IT governance. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that solely prioritizes the lowest upfront cost without a comprehensive technical assessment is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the selection of solutions that are not scalable, are prone to performance degradation, or introduce significant security risks. For example, choosing a cheaper, uncertified network device might save money initially, but could result in compatibility issues, lack of vendor support, and vulnerabilities that are difficult and expensive to remediate later. This failure to conduct due diligence violates the professional obligation to implement robust and secure infrastructure. Another incorrect approach would be to adopt a solution based on anecdotal evidence or the perceived popularity of a particular technology without verifying its suitability for the specific data center environment and its alignment with Cisco's recommended architectures. This can lead to suboptimal performance, integration challenges, and a failure to leverage the full capabilities of the data center infrastructure. It represents a lack of rigorous technical evaluation and a departure from evidence-based decision-making. Finally, an approach that ignores potential future operational overhead and maintenance costs in favor of immediate savings is also professionally flawed. A solution that is difficult to manage, requires extensive manual configuration, or lacks adequate monitoring capabilities will inevitably lead to higher operational expenses and increased risk of human error, negating any initial cost advantage. This demonstrates a short-sighted perspective that does not align with the principles of efficient and effective data center management. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of business requirements and technical objectives. This is followed by a comprehensive evaluation of potential solutions against established technical criteria, including performance, scalability, security, manageability, and alignment with vendor best practices. Total cost of ownership analysis, considering both upfront and ongoing expenses, is crucial. Risk assessment, including potential security vulnerabilities and operational challenges, should be integrated into the evaluation process. Finally, clear and transparent communication with stakeholders, articulating the technical rationale and long-term benefits of the recommended approach, is essential for gaining buy-in and ensuring successful implementation. Question 7. Governance review demonstrates that a critical storage array component is exhibiting intermittent performance degradation, impacting several key business applications. The infrastructure team suspects a hardware issue with the specific component, but the vendor's standard support contract requires a structured escalation and troubleshooting process. Which of the following actions best represents a professionally responsible and compliant approach to resolving this issue? Option A. Immediately engage the vendor's technical support team, providing them with all relevant diagnostic data and performance metrics, and follow their recommended troubleshooting and resolution procedures, ensuring all changes are documented and approved through the change management process. Option B. Document the performance issue but defer any active troubleshooting or vendor engagement until a scheduled maintenance window, accepting the ongoing impact on business applications. Option C. Implement a series of unapproved configuration changes on the storage array, hoping to bypass the suspected faulty component, without consulting the vendor or seeking formal change approval. Option D. Attempt to diagnose and fix the hardware issue entirely using internal tools and expertise, delaying vendor engagement until all internal options are exhausted, regardless of the impact on business applications. The correct answer is A. Immediately engage the vendor's technical support team, providing them with all relevant diagnostic data and performance metrics, and follow their recommended troubleshooting and resolution procedures, ensuring all changes are documented and approved through the change management process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center infrastructure implementation, where a critical component's performance is impacting overall service delivery. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for resolution with adherence to established change management processes and vendor support agreements. Rushing a fix without proper validation or authorization can lead to unintended consequences, service disruption, and potential breaches of contractual obligations. The pressure to restore service quickly can tempt engineers to bypass standard procedures, creating a professionally risky situation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic, documented, and authorized process for addressing the performance issue. This aligns with best practices in IT service management and data center operations, which are implicitly supported by the principles of good governance and operational efficiency expected in Cisco's implementation frameworks. Specifically, engaging the vendor for support is crucial because the issue is suspected to be related to a specific hardware component. This ensures that troubleshooting is performed by individuals with expert knowledge of the product, leveraging vendor-provided diagnostic tools and knowledge bases. Documenting the issue, the troubleshooting steps, and the resolution is essential for auditing, knowledge sharing, and future problem prevention. Obtaining necessary approvals before implementing any significant changes, especially those involving vendor intervention or potential configuration modifications, safeguards against unauthorized actions, and ensures alignment with business priorities and risk tolerance. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of further disruption and ensures that any implemented solution is robust and sustainable. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a configuration change without vendor consultation or proper authorization is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established change control procedures, which are designed to prevent unintended service degradation. This action could violate the vendor's support agreement, potentially voiding warranties or support contracts, if the change causes further damage or is not implemented according to vendor specifications. It also demonstrates a lack of professional due diligence by not leveraging the expertise available through the vendor. Attempting to resolve the issue solely through internal resources without engaging the vendor, especially when the problem is suspected to be hardware-related, is also professionally unsound. This approach risks wasting valuable internal resources on ineffective troubleshooting, prolonging the outage, and potentially making the problem worse. It fails to utilize the most efficient and effective means of resolution, which is often vendor support for specialized hardware issues. This can be seen as a failure in resource management and a disregard for established support channels. Ignoring the issue and hoping it resolves itself is a clear abdication of professional responsibility. It directly contradicts the governance review's finding of a performance impact and demonstrates a failure to act proactively. This approach leads to continued service degradation, impacts business operations, and erodes trust in the IT infrastructure team. Ethically, it is a failure to uphold the duty of care to the organization and its users. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should employ a structured decision-making framework. First, clearly define the problem and its impact, as identified by the governance review. Second, identify all available resources and support channels, including internal expertise and vendor support. Third, evaluate potential solutions based on their effectiveness, risk, and adherence to established processes and agreements. Fourth, seek necessary approvals for the chosen course of action. Fifth, implement the solution methodically, documenting every step. Finally, verify the resolution and conduct a post-implementation review to capture lessons learned. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, justifiable, and aligned with organizational objectives and professional standards. Question 8. Research into the implementation of a new high-availability data center infrastructure reveals a need to establish a comprehensive security posture. Which of the following methodologies best supports the development of a security strategy that is both effective and compliant with general data protection principles? Option A. Rely on common industry perceptions of security threats and implement controls that are widely adopted without specific analysis. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets, potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their potential impact, then prioritize security controls based on the findings. Option C. Focus on implementing the most cost-effective security measures to minimize the overall project expenditure. Option D. Deploy the latest available security hardware and software solutions across all network segments to ensure maximum protection. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify critical assets, potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their potential impact, then prioritize security controls based on the findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center infrastructure implementation, balancing the need for robust security controls with operational efficiency and cost-effectiveness. The professional challenge lies in accurately assessing the risks associated with a new data center deployment, ensuring that security measures are proportionate to the identified threats, and that these measures align with relevant regulatory requirements without becoming overly burdensome. The Cisco 300-165 exam focuses on practical implementation, meaning that understanding how to translate risk assessment findings into actionable security designs is paramount. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it follows a structured, systematic methodology for risk assessment. This involves identifying assets, threats, vulnerabilities, and potential impacts, and then prioritizing mitigation strategies based on the likelihood and severity of risks. This aligns with general IT security best practices and implicitly with regulatory frameworks that mandate a risk-based approach to security, such as those requiring due diligence in protecting sensitive data. By focusing on the most critical risks first, resources are allocated efficiently, and the most significant vulnerabilities are addressed promptly, ensuring compliance and operational resilience. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on implementing the most advanced security technologies without a prior risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This fails to meet regulatory requirements that often mandate a tailored security posture based on specific risks, not a one-size-fits-all solution. It can lead to misallocation of resources, unnecessary complexity, and potentially overlooking critical, albeit less technologically sophisticated, risks. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise due diligence in protecting the organization's assets and data. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings above all else, potentially leading to the omission of essential security controls identified during a risk assessment, is also professionally unacceptable. This directly contravenes the principle of proportionate security and can expose the organization to significant financial and reputational damage if a breach occurs. Regulatory frameworks often have minimum security standards that cannot be compromised for cost reasons. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or industry buzzwords rather than a formal risk assessment process is professionally unsound. This lacks the rigor required for effective risk management and can lead to a false sense of security or, conversely, to unnecessary alarm. It fails to provide a defensible basis for security decisions and can be a significant compliance failure if regulators require documented risk assessments. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's assets and their value, a thorough identification of potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the data center environment, and a systematic evaluation of the likelihood and impact of these risks. This assessment should then inform the design and implementation of security controls, ensuring that they are both effective and efficient, and that they meet all applicable regulatory and compliance obligations. Documentation of the risk assessment process and its outcomes is crucial for demonstrating due diligence and for ongoing review and refinement of the security posture. Question 9. The assessment process reveals that a critical new application requiring significant data center resources is scheduled for deployment within a tight deadline. The existing network security policies and configurations are deemed sufficient for current services, but may not adequately address the specific security requirements and potential attack vectors associated with this new application. The operations team is under pressure to expedite the deployment to meet business objectives. Which of the following actions best represents a professional and compliant approach to this situation? Option A. Halt the application deployment indefinitely until a complete re-architecture of the entire data center security framework can be completed. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment for the new application, identify specific security gaps, and implement targeted security controls and policy adjustments to mitigate identified risks before or concurrently with the application deployment. Option C. Implement a blanket, highly restrictive security policy across the entire data center to ensure maximum protection, even if it significantly impacts the performance and functionality of the new application and other existing services. Option D. Proceed with the application deployment as scheduled, relying on the existing security infrastructure, and address any security issues that arise after the application is live. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment for the new application, identify specific security gaps, and implement targeted security controls and policy adjustments to mitigate identified risks before or concurrently with the application deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, balancing the need for rapid deployment of new services with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant infrastructure. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass established security protocols, creating vulnerabilities. The professional challenge lies in navigating these competing demands, ensuring that operational agility does not compromise regulatory adherence and data integrity. Careful judgment is required to assess risks, communicate effectively with stakeholders, and implement solutions that are both efficient and secure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and the implementation of compensating controls. This aligns with best practices in data center security and compliance, which emphasize a proactive rather than reactive stance. By identifying potential vulnerabilities introduced by the new service and implementing specific security measures, e.g., enhanced firewall rules, intrusion detection system tuning, access control list reviews, the organization mitigates risks without halting innovation. This demonstrates a commitment to security by design and adherence to principles of least privilege and defense in depth, which are foundational to robust data center infrastructure management. This approach ensures that the deployment meets both business objectives and regulatory requirements. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the deployment without any additional security measures, relying solely on existing, potentially inadequate configurations. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates negligence in risk management and a disregard for the potential impact of a security breach, which could lead to data loss, service disruption, and reputational damage. Such an approach violates the principle of due diligence expected in managing critical infrastructure and could contravene data protection regulations by failing to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures. Another incorrect approach is to delay the deployment indefinitely until a comprehensive security overhaul can be completed. While security is paramount, an indefinite delay can stifle business operations and innovation, leading to missed market opportunities. This approach fails to strike a balance between security and operational needs. Ethically, it may also be seen as an overreaction that hinders business progress without a clear justification for the extreme delay, especially if the risks could be managed through more targeted interventions. It does not reflect a pragmatic approach to risk management. A third incorrect approach is to implement a broad, overly restrictive security policy that significantly impedes the functionality of the new service and potentially impacts other existing services. While intended to enhance security, this approach is inefficient and can be counterproductive. It demonstrates a lack of understanding of the specific security needs of the new service and a failure to apply the principle of proportionality in security measures. This can lead to operational inefficiencies and user frustration, and may not be the most effective way to achieve the desired security posture. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to security and compliance. This involves understanding the business context, identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing the impact of those threats, and implementing controls that are proportionate to the identified risks. Effective communication with stakeholders, including business units and security teams, is crucial to ensure alignment and buy-in. When faced with pressure to deploy quickly, professionals should advocate for a structured process that includes security reviews and risk mitigation strategies, rather than compromising on essential safeguards. The decision-making process should prioritize the protection of data and services, while enabling business objectives through secure and efficient means. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate a critical vulnerability has been identified within a specific application hosted on a data center server, potentially allowing unauthorized access. The application is essential for daily business operations. What is the most appropriate immediate action to mitigate this risk while minimizing operational disruption? Option A. Disable the entire application server until a patch can be developed and deployed. Option B. Implement a broad network segmentation policy that isolates the entire subnet containing the application server from all external traffic. Option C. Ignore the alert and continue normal operations, assuming the vulnerability is not actively being exploited. Option D. Implement a granular access control list, ACL, on the firewall to restrict traffic to only necessary ports and protocols for the affected application. The correct answer is D. Implement a granular access control list, ACL, on the firewall to restrict traffic to only necessary ports and protocols for the affected application. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center infrastructure implementation, balancing the immediate need for enhanced security with the potential for disruption to critical services. The challenge lies in selecting a security measure that is both effective against the identified threat and minimizes operational impact. The decision requires a thorough understanding of the Cisco 300-165 exam scope, which includes network security principles within a data center context, and the ability to apply these principles in a practical, risk-aware manner. The pressure to act quickly against a credible threat, coupled with the inherent complexity of data center operations, necessitates a structured and informed decision-making process. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a granular access control list, ACL, on the firewall to restrict traffic to only necessary ports and protocols for the affected application is the best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the identified vulnerability by limiting the attack surface without a complete service shutdown. It aligns with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept emphasized in data center security best practices. This method allows for targeted mitigation, ensuring that only unauthorized access attempts are blocked, thereby preserving legitimate application functionality. This is the most responsible and effective response within the scope of implementing data center infrastructure, as it prioritizes both security and operational continuity. Incorrect approach is analysis. Disabling the entire application server is an overly broad and disruptive response. While it would certainly prevent the exploit, it fails to consider the operational impact and the principle of proportionality in security measures. This approach represents a failure to apply nuanced security controls and could lead to significant business disruption, which is often unacceptable in a data center environment. Demonstrates a lack of understanding of how to implement targeted security solutions. Implementing a broad network segmentation policy that isolates the entire subnet containing the application server from all external traffic is also an overreaction. While segmentation is a valid security strategy, applying it so broadly without specific targeting of the vulnerable component can unnecessarily impact other services and users within that subnet. This approach lacks the precision required for effective incident response and demonstrates a failure to analyze the specific nature of the threat and its impact. Ignoring the alert and continuing normal operations is a direct violation of security best practices and potentially regulatory compliance, depending on the specific data center's operational framework, which is assumed to be within a standard U.S. regulatory context for this exam. This approach represents a severe lapse in risk management and a failure to acknowledge and address a credible security threat, which could have severe consequences for data integrity and availability. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such a situation should employ a structured incident response and decision-making framework. This typically involves 1. Threat identification and analysis. Understand the nature and scope of the threat. 2. Impact assessment. Evaluate the potential consequences of the threat on business operations and data. 3. Solution evaluation. Consider various mitigation strategies, weighing their effectiveness, operational impact, and implementation complexity. 4. Implementation. Deploy the chosen solution in a controlled and phased manner if possible. 5. Verification and monitoring. Confirm the effectiveness of the solution and continue to monitor for further threats. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are data-driven, risk-informed, and aligned with both security objectives and business requirements. Question 11. Which approach would be most effective in ensuring a new data center infrastructure upgrade, handling protected health information, fully complies with the U.S. Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, security rules technical safeguards? Option A. Implementing security features recommended by hardware and software vendors who claim their products are HIPAA compliant without independent verification. Option B. Relying on the IT implementation team to apply general cybersecurity best practices and assuming these will inherently meet HIPAA requirements. Option C. Conducting a thorough risk assessment focused on identifying vulnerabilities related to electronic protected health information, EFI, and implementing technical safeguards that directly address these identified risks in consultation with legal and security experts. Option D. Delegating the entire responsibility for HIPAA compliance to the project manager without providing them with specific legal or compliance training. Correct answer is C. Conducting a thorough risk assessment focused on identifying vulnerabilities related to electronic protected health information, EFI, and implementing technical safeguards that directly address these identified risks in consultation with legal and security experts. Explanation. Scenario analysis. A data center infrastructure project is undergoing a significant upgrade, involving the implementation of new network virtualization technologies and storage solutions. The project manager is tasked with ensuring that all implemented solutions comply with the relevant U.S. regulatory framework governing data privacy and security, specifically focusing on the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for any protected health information, FI, that might be processed or stored within the data center. The challenge lies in the complexity of HIPAA security rule, which mandates specific administrative, physical, and technical safeguards. Misinterpreting or overlooking any of these requirements could lead to severe penalties, including substantial fines and reputational damage, especially given the sensitive nature of healthcare data. The project manager must navigate the technical implementation details while maintaining strict adherence to these legal obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive risk assessment specifically tailored to the HIPAA security rules requirements for technical safeguards. This means identifying all potential vulnerabilities in the new infrastructure that could impact the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic PHI E5. It necessitates engaging with security experts and legal counsel to interpret the rules mandates in the context of the implemented technologies. The chosen approach should prioritize implementing encryption for data at rest and in transit, robust access controls, audit trails, and secure network configurations, all of which are explicit or implied requirements under HIPAA. This demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and a thorough understanding of legal obligations, representing best professional practice by embedding compliance into the design and implementation phases. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to assume that general IT security best practices are sufficient without a specific HIPAA security rule audit. This fails to address the unique and stringent requirements for protecting PHI, potentially leaving the organization exposed to breaches and noncompliance penalties. It represents an ethical failure by not taking adequate steps to safeguard sensitive patient data as mandated by law. Another incorrect approach would be to defer all compliance decisions to the IT implementation team without involving legal or compliance officers. This creates a significant risk of overlooking critical legal nuances and misinterpreting regulatory intent. It is a failure of professional responsibility to delegate compliance oversight without ensuring the necessary expertise is present and consulted. A third incorrect approach would be to implement security measures based solely on vendor claims of HIPAA compliance without independent verification. Vendors may offer solutions that can be configured to meet HIPAA standards, but the responsibility for ensuring actual compliance rests with the covered entity. Relying solely on vendor assurances without due diligence is a regulatory failure and a breach of professional ethics, as it abdicates the organization's legal duty. Professional reasoning. Professionals in data center infrastructure implementation must adopt a risk-based approach to regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the specific legal and regulatory landscape applicable to the data being handled, conducting thorough assessments to identify compliance gaps, and integrating compliance requirements into project planning and execution from the outset. When dealing with sensitive data like PHI, engaging with subject matter experts in both technology and law is paramount. The decision-making process should prioritize proactive measures over reactive ones, ensuring that compliance is a foundational element of the infrastructure design, not an afterthought. This systematic approach minimizes risk, protects sensitive information, and upholds legal and ethical obligations. Question 12. The review process indicates that a critical data corruption event has occurred in a production data center environment, impacting several key databases. The immediate business pressure is to restore services as quickly as possible. You have access to recent backups, but the exact cause of the corruption is not yet fully understood. Which of the following actions best upholds professional ethics and regulatory compliance in this situation? Option A. Immediately restore the affected databases from the most recent available backup to minimize downtime, and address any potential data inconsistencies or the root cause of the corruption in a subsequent maintenance window. Option B. Bring the affected systems back online with the corrupted data to meet immediate service level agreements, with a plan to investigate and remediate the corruption once the immediate operational demands have subsided. Option C. Attempt to manually repair the corrupted data in the live environment using available tools, prioritizing speed to restore functionality, and document the repair process afterward. Option D. Initiate a full investigation into the root cause of the data corruption, followed by a controlled data recovery process using validated backups and rigorous testing to ensure data integrity before bringing systems back online. Correct answer is D. Initiate a full investigation into the root cause of the data corruption, followed by a controlled data recovery process using validated backups and rigorous testing to ensure data integrity before bringing systems back online. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical obligation to maintain data integrity and security within a Cisco data center environment, as governed by the principles of responsible data handling and compliance. The core dilemma lies in balancing the immediate need for system functionality with the long-term implications of potentially compromised data. The pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that violate established protocols and ethical standards, necessitating careful judgment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established security protocols and regulatory guidelines for data handling and incident response. This involves a thorough investigation to identify the root cause of the data corruption, implementing a robust data recovery process that ensures data integrity, and documenting all actions taken. This aligns with best professional practices by upholding the principle of do no harm to data, maintaining audit trails for accountability, and ensuring compliance with data protection regulations. The emphasis on verification and validation before bringing systems back online is crucial for preventing further data loss or corruption, and for rebuilding trust in the data center's reliability. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately restoring the system from the last known good backup without a thorough investigation. This is ethically problematic because it bypasses the critical step of understanding the cause of the corruption, potentially leaving vulnerabilities unaddressed and risking recurrence. It also fails to account for any data changes that occurred between the backup and the corruption event, leading to data loss and a violation of data integrity principles. From a regulatory standpoint, this could be seen as negligent data management if it leads to significant data loss, or if the underlying cause is not identified and remediated, which could have compliance implications depending on the data type. Another incorrect approach is to attempt to manually repair the corrupted data in place without proper tools or validation. This is highly risky and ethically unsound, as it can easily exacerbate the corruption, making recovery more difficult or impossible. It also lacks the necessary auditability and transparency required by many regulatory frameworks. Professionals are expected to use approved and documented methods for data recovery, not ad hoc, undocumented fixes that could lead to further data integrity issues and potential legal or compliance ramifications. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize restoring service by bringing the system back online with the corrupted data, intending to address the corruption later. This is a severe ethical and professional failing. It knowingly perpetuates the use of compromised data, which can lead to flawed decision-making, incorrect reporting, and potential harm to users or the organization. This directly violates the principle of data integrity and could have significant regulatory consequences, especially if the corrupted data is used for critical business functions or compliance reporting. Professional reasoning. Professionals in data center infrastructure must adopt a decision-making process that integrates technical proficiency with ethical responsibility and regulatory awareness. When faced with data integrity issues, the framework should involve 1. Immediate containment and assessment to prevent further damage. 2. Thorough investigation to understand the root cause. 3. Adherence to documented recovery procedures, prioritizing data integrity and security. 4. Comprehensive testing and validation before system restoration. 5. Meticulous documentation of all actions and findings for audit and compliance purposes. This systematic approach ensures that technical solutions are implemented ethically and in accordance with all applicable regulations. Question 13. The analysis reveals that a critical business unit has requested an immediate, ad hoc configuration change to a core data center service to support a time-sensitive marketing campaign. This request bypasses the standard change management process and has not undergone a formal security or compliance review. The IT infrastructure team is concerned about potential risks to data integrity and service availability. What is the most professionally responsible course of action for the IT infrastructure team? Option A. Inform the business unit that their request cannot be fulfilled due to the lack of adherence to standard procedures and advise them to resubmit through the proper channels at a later date. Option B. Immediately implement the requested configuration change to meet the business unit's urgent deadline, assuming the risk of potential downstream issues. Option C. Initiate a formal change request, documenting the business need, assessing the technical and security implications, and seeking appropriate approvals before implementing the change. Option D. Escalate the request directly to senior management for an immediate override of standard procedures, citing the business unit's urgency. The correct answer is C. Initiate a formal change request, documenting the business need, assessing the technical and security implications, and seeking appropriate approvals before implementing the change. Explanation. The analysis reveals a common challenge in data center infrastructure projects. balancing the immediate operational needs of a business unit with the long-term strategic goals and compliance requirements of the organization. This scenario is professionally challenging because the business unit's request, while seemingly urgent, could introduce significant technical debt, security vulnerabilities, and non-compliance with established data governance policies. Careful judgment is required to assess the true impact of the request against the broader organizational context. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, risk-aware, and compliant methodology. By initiating a formal change request, the IT team ensures that the proposed modification is documented, assessed for its impact on security, performance, and compliance, and aligned with the overall data center strategy. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance, which mandate thorough evaluation before implementing changes that could affect critical infrastructure. Adhering to established change management processes, as implicitly required by the Cisco 300-165, exams focus on operational best practices, prevents ad hoc decisions that could lead to system instability or regulatory breaches. An incorrect approach that bypasses formal change control processes and directly implements the requested configuration without proper assessment represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to unauthorized access, data leakage, or a violation of data residency requirements if the new configuration does not adhere to the organization's established data protection policies. Furthermore, it undermines the integrity of the IT infrastructure and the established governance framework, creating a precedent for future noncompliance. Another incorrect approach, which is to immediately reject the request without understanding its underlying business drivers, is also professionally unsound. While it avoids immediate risk, it fails to address the business unit's needs and can lead to frustration and workarounds that are even less secure or compliant. This demonstrates a lack of collaboration and strategic alignment, hindering the IT department's role as a business enabler. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the organization's change management policies, security standards, and data governance frameworks. When a request is received, the first step should be to understand the business need behind it. Then, initiate the formal change request process, which typically involves impact analysis, risk assessment, security review, and compliance validation. If the request is deemed necessary and beneficial, it should be scheduled and implemented according to established procedures. If it poses significant risks or conflicts with policy, a discussion should be held with the requesting business unit to explore alternative solutions that meet their needs while remaining compliant and secure. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that the data center's current manual provisioning processes for network services are inefficient and costly. To address this, a proposal is made to implement a new, highly automated orchestration platform, which approach best balances the need for process optimization with the imperative of maintaining regulatory compliance and operational integrity. Option A. Prioritize the implementation of the orchestration platform based on the potential for immediate cost savings, deferring comprehensive security and compliance validation until after the initial deployment to avoid delaying the project's financial objectives. Option B. Conduct a pilot deployment of the orchestration platform in a segregated, non-production environment to thoroughly test its functionality, security, and integration with existing compliance monitoring tools, followed by a phased rollout to production environments based on successful validation. Option C. Deploy the new orchestration platform immediately across all data center environments to realize the full benefits of automation as quickly as possible, with post-deployment audits to identify any compliance gaps. Option D. Implement the orchestration platform in production environments with minimal upfront testing, relying on the vendor's assurances of compliance and security, and address any identified issues reactively as they arise. The correct answer is C. Deploy the new orchestration platform immediately across all data center environments to realize the full benefits of automation as quickly as possible, with post-deployment audits to identify any compliance gaps. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, where the drive for efficiency and cost reduction clashes with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance. The pressure to implement new technologies rapidly, without adequate consideration for their impact on existing processes and regulatory adherence, creates a high-risk environment. Professionals must balance innovation with the need for stability, security, and compliance, requiring careful judgment to avoid unintended consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased implementation strategy that prioritizes thorough testing, validation, and documentation within the existing regulatory framework. This ensures that any new process or technology is evaluated against current compliance requirements, e.g., data privacy regulations, industry-specific standards, before full deployment. It also allows for the identification and mitigation of potential security vulnerabilities or operational disruptions. This methodical approach aligns with best practices for change management and risk mitigation, ensuring that process optimization does not compromise the integrity of the data center infrastructure or violate regulatory mandates. The emphasis on continuous monitoring and adaptation further reinforces compliance and operational excellence. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing new automation tools without a comprehensive risk assessment and validation against current compliance standards is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses critical due diligence, potentially leading to non-compliance with data handling, privacy, or security regulations. It also exposes the organization to operational risks and security breaches. Adopting a move fast and break things mentality, even in a non-production environment, is professionally unacceptable. While agility is valued, it must be within a controlled framework. This approach disregards the potential for unforeseen impacts on production systems or data, violating principles of responsible IT management and potentially leading to data loss or security incidents, which could have regulatory repercussions. Focusing solely on cost savings without evaluating the impact on security, compliance, or operational stability is a flawed strategy. Regulatory frameworks often mandate specific security controls and operational procedures to protect data and ensure service availability. Ignoring these requirements in pursuit of cost reduction can lead to severe penalties and reputational damage. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the current regulatory landscape and internal compliance policies. When considering process optimization, the first step is to conduct a thorough impact assessment, evaluating potential effects on security, compliance, performance, and existing workflows. This should be followed by a risk assessment to identify and prioritize potential issues. A phased implementation with rigorous testing, validation, and documentation is crucial. Continuous monitoring and a feedback loop for adaptation are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and operational effectiveness. Any proposed change must demonstrate clear alignment with regulatory requirements and organizational policies before deployment. Question 15. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in application response times for a critical financial trading platform hosted within the data center. Initial observations indicate elevated latency during peak trading hours, impacting transaction processing speed. Which of the following approaches is the most effective for optimizing the performance of this platform? Option A. Immediately upgrade the network interface cards (NIC) on all servers hosting the trading platform to the highest available speed. Option B. Conduct a detailed analysis of network traffic patterns, server resource utilization, CPU memory I/O, and application-specific logs to identify the precise source of the latency. Option C. Focus troubleshooting efforts solely on the database servers, assuming they are the bottleneck due to the transactional nature of the application. Option D. Implement a comprehensive quality of service (QoS) policy across the entire data center network to prioritize all financial trading traffic. Correct answer is D. Implement a comprehensive quality of service (QoS) policy across the entire data center network to prioritize all financial trading traffic. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, identifying and rectifying performance bottlenecks that impact application responsiveness and user experience. The professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the observed latency without disrupting ongoing services or making assumptions that could lead to misconfiguration. A systematic approach is crucial to ensure that interventions are effective and do not introduce new problems. The correct approach involves a methodical investigation, starting with broad monitoring and progressively narrowing down the scope. This aligns with best practices for process optimization in IT infrastructure emphasizing data-driven decision-making and minimizing risk. By analyzing traffic patterns, resource utilization, and application logs, engineers can pinpoint the specific component or process contributing to the latency. This proactive and analytical method ensures that solutions are targeted and efficient, leading to improved performance and reliability. Incorrect approaches often stem from hasty conclusions or a lack of comprehensive analysis. Implementing a broad network-wide CO-S policy without understanding the specific traffic causing the congestion is a prime example of a potentially detrimental action. This could inadvertently deprioritize critical application traffic, exacerbating the problem or impacting other services. Similarly, assuming a hardware failure without thorough diagnostics can lead to unnecessary hardware replacement, incurring costs and downtime without resolving the actual issue. Focusing solely on server-side metrics without considering network or storage performance provides an incomplete picture and can lead to misdirected troubleshooting efforts. Professionals should employ a structured troubleshooting methodology. This typically involves defining the problem clearly, gathering information through monitoring and logging, hypothesizing potential causes, testing hypotheses systematically, implementing solutions, and verifying the results. This iterative process, grounded in data and logical deduction, is essential for effective process optimization and maintaining a stable, high-performing data center environment. Question 16. During the evaluation of a data center's risk posture, which of the following approaches would most effectively identify and prioritize potential security threats and vulnerabilities for mitigation? Option A. Prioritizing mitigation efforts based on the potential impact on critical business functions and the likelihood of the threat occurring. Option B. Allocating resources to address the cheapest potential threats first, regardless of their impact. Option C. Focusing exclusively on the most widely publicized cyber threats reported in recent industry news. Option D. Relying solely on security reports provided by hardware and software vendors without independent verification. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing mitigation efforts based on the potential impact on critical business functions and the likelihood of the threat occurring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center risk assessment, balancing the need for comprehensive security with operational efficiency and cost-effectiveness. The challenge lies in identifying and prioritizing risks that have the most significant potential impact on the data center's availability, integrity, and confidentiality, while also considering the practical constraints of implementation. A failure to accurately assess and prioritize risks can lead to misallocation of resources, leaving critical vulnerabilities exposed or investing heavily in mitigating minor threats. The professional challenge is to move beyond a superficial understanding of potential threats and conduct a thorough, evidence-based evaluation that aligns with business objectives and regulatory requirements. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic process of identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, analyzing their likelihood and potential impact, and then prioritizing mitigation efforts based on a defined risk appetite. This aligns with best practices in data center security and risk management, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks that mandate appropriate security controls and due diligence. By focusing on the potential impact on critical business function and data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, this approach ensures that resources are directed towards the most significant risks. This methodology is crucial for demonstrating compliance with general principles of due care and prudent management, which are foundational to many regulatory environments, even if specific regulations are not explicitly cited in this context. It represents a proactive and strategic stance towards security, rather than a reactive one. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to solely focus on the most frequently reported or publicized threats without a specific analysis of their relevance and potential impact within the organization's unique data center environment. This can lead to a misallocation of resources, addressing threats that are unlikely to materialize or have a low impact, while neglecting more critical, context-specific risks. This approach fails to demonstrate due diligence in understanding the specific threat landscape and the organization's unique vulnerabilities, which could be seen as a failure to implement appropriate controls as generally expected under risk management principles. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize mitigation efforts based on the perceived cost of the threat rather than its actual potential impact and likelihood. While cost is a factor in risk management, it should not be the primary driver for prioritization. Focusing solely on low-cost threats might mean overlooking high-impact risks that require significant investment to mitigate. This approach is ethically questionable, as it may knowingly leave critical assets exposed to severe damage or disruption due to a short-sighted focus on immediate cost savings, potentially violating the principle of acting in the best interest of the organization's long-term security and operational stability. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on vendor-provided security assessments without independent validation or contextualization. While vendor assessments can be valuable, they may not fully capture the specific operational nuances, configurations, and interdependencies within the organization's data center. This can lead to a false sense of security or the overlooking of unique risks. Ethically, it represents a failure to exercise independent professional judgment and due diligence in ensuring the comprehensive security of the data center infrastructure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk assessment methodology that begins with a clear understanding of the data center's critical assets and business functions. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the specific environment, analyzing the likelihood of these threats occurring, and their potential impact on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The next step is to prioritize risks based on a defined risk matrix and the organization's risk appetite. Mitigation strategies should then be developed and implemented, with a continuous process of monitoring and review to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the environment. This systematic approach ensures that risk management is integrated into the overall operational strategy and demonstrates a commitment to robust security practices. Question 17. Stakeholder feedback indicates a critical business application requires immediate deployment into the data center, and the standard security validation timeline is a significant bottleneck. The proposed deployment plan includes a deviation from the established network segmentation policy to expedite connectivity. What is the most professional and compliant approach to address this situation? Option A. Implement the deployment with the proposed network segmentation deviation without formal documentation or approval, assuming the risk is acceptable given the business criticality. Option B. Initiate a formal exception request process, clearly documenting the proposed deviation, the associated risks, and any proposed compensating controls, seeking approval from the appropriate security and management authorities before proceeding. Option C. Proceed with the deployment as planned, bypassing the standard security validation and segmentation policy to meet the business deadline, and address any security concerns post-deployment. Option D. Inform stakeholders that the deployment cannot proceed until the standard security validation and policy adherence are fully completed, regardless of the business urgency. The correct answer is B. Initiate a formal exception request process, clearly documenting the proposed deviation, the associated risks, and any proposed compensating controls, seeking approval from the appropriate security and management authorities before proceeding. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in data center networking, balancing the need for rapid deployment with the imperative of adhering to established security policies and best practices. Stakeholders, driven by business needs, often prioritize speed, which can lead to pressure to bypass or shortcut critical security validation steps. The professional challenge lies in effectively communicating the risks associated with expedited deployments and advocating for adherence to the established framework, ensuring that security is not compromised for the sake of expediency. This requires not only technical understanding, but also strong communication and negotiation skills. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured and documented process for exception handling. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for IT infrastructure management. Cisco's recommended methodologies, as reflected in the 300-165 exam, emphasize a phased approach to implementation, including rigorous testing and validation before production deployment. When deviations are necessary, a formal exception process ensures that these deviations are reviewed, approved by appropriate authorities, and that mitigating controls are implemented. This demonstrates due diligence, accountability, and a commitment to maintaining the integrity and security of the data center environment, which is crucial for compliance with general IT governance principles. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the deployment without formal approval or documentation of the security deviations. This represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses established change control procedures, which are fundamental to IT governance and auditability. Such an action could lead to security vulnerabilities, unauthorized access, or data breaches, all of which carry severe compliance implications and potential legal repercussions. It also undermines the principle of accountability, as there is no record of who authorized the deviation or what risks were accepted. Another incorrect approach is to implement the change without any form of security validation, even if it is expedited. This is professionally unacceptable because it directly contradicts the core principles of secure network design and implementation. The 300-165 curriculum stresses the importance of security throughout the data center lifecycle. Ignoring validation, even under pressure, creates an unacceptable risk profile for the organization. It demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a disregard for the potential impact on business operations and data confidentiality. A third incorrect approach is to delay the deployment indefinitely due to minor security concerns that could be addressed through a documented exception process. While caution is important, an indefinite delay without a clear path to resolution is also professionally problematic. It can hinder business objectives and lead to frustration among stakeholders. The professional approach involves finding a balance, utilizing established processes like exception handling to manage risks effectively and enable progress. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding the business drivers for the expedited deployment. Then, they must assess the security implications of any proposed shortcuts. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the specific security controls that are being bypassed or modified. 2. Quantifying the associated risks. 3. Proposing a formal exception request that clearly outlines the deviation, the risks, and any proposed mitigating controls. 4. Engaging with relevant stakeholders, including security teams and management, to gain approval for the exception. 5. Documenting the entire process meticulously. This structured approach ensures that decisions are made with full awareness of the risks and in accordance with organizational policies and best practices. Question 18. The monitoring system demonstrates intermittent packet loss on a critical network segment connecting the compute cluster to the storage fabric. Which of the following approaches best mitigates the immediate risk while ensuring operational stability? Option A. Immediately initiate a full diagnostic sweep of all network devices in the affected segment, followed by a planned reboot of the core switch if no immediate cause is identified. Option B. Increase the buffer sizes on all network interfaces within the affected segment to absorb the intermittent packet loss. Option C. Isolate the entire compute cluster from the network to prevent further potential data corruption until the network issue is fully resolved. Option D. Analyze historical performance data for the affected segment, correlate packet loss with specific application or service activity, and assess the business impact of potential service degradation before proposing targeted troubleshooting steps. The correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a full diagnostic sweep of all network devices in the affected segment, followed by a planned reboot of the core switch if no immediate cause is identified. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations where a critical system exhibits anomalous behavior. The professional challenge lies in accurately identifying the root cause of the performance degradation without disrupting ongoing operations or compromising data integrity. A hasty or misinformed response could lead to significant business impact, including service outages, data loss, and reputational damage. The pressure to resolve the issue quickly, coupled with the complexity of interconnected data center components, necessitates a systematic and evidence-based approach to risk assessment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured risk assessment process that prioritizes understanding the potential impact of the anomaly before implementing any corrective actions. This aligns with best professional practices for IT service management and operational resilience. By first analyzing the observed symptoms, correlating them with known system behaviors, and then evaluating the potential business impact of different failure modes, engineers can make informed decisions. This methodical approach ensures that any proposed remediation steps are proportionate to the identified risk and minimize the likelihood of unintended consequences. It also supports compliance with operational guidelines that mandate proactive risk management and incident response planning. Incorrect approaches analysis, implementing immediate, unverified changes to critical infrastructure components without a thorough risk assessment, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses the due diligence required to understand the potential downstream effects of such actions. For instance, randomly rebooting a storage array or network switch based on a single symptom could exacerbate the problem, cause cascading failures, or lead to data corruption, violating principles of data integrity and service availability. Such actions demonstrate a lack of professional judgment and disregard for established operational procedures designed to protect the business and its data. Furthermore, failing to document the assessment process and the rationale for any changes can hinder post-incident analysis and prevent learning from the event, which is a common requirement in many IT governance frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should follow a decision-making framework that begins with clear incident identification and logging. This is followed by a systematic analysis of symptoms, leveraging monitoring tools and historical data. The next critical step is a risk assessment, which involves evaluating the potential impact on business services, data integrity, and security. Based on this assessment, potential remediation strategies are identified, and their risks and benefits are weighed. The chosen strategy should then be implemented with careful monitoring and validation. Documentation at each stage is crucial for accountability, knowledge transfer, and continuous improvement. Question 19. Regulatory review indicates that a new customer-facing application will process personally identifiable information, PI, and financial transaction data. The infrastructure team is under pressure to deploy this application rapidly to meet market demand. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with relevant U.S. data protection regulations, such as those pertaining to financial data and consumer privacy, while enabling timely deployment? Option A. Rely on the existing general security measures implemented for other applications, assuming they will adequately protect the new application's data without specific validation. Option B. Prioritize the speed of deployment above all else, assuming that any potential compliance issues can be resolved through fines or post-deployment remediation if they arise. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy and security impact assessment for the new application, ensuring all data handling, storage, and access controls align with U.S. federal and state regulations before deployment, and integrate necessary compliance measures into the deployment plan. Option D. Deploy the application immediately to capture market share, and initiate a compliance review process after the initial launch to address any identified gaps. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data privacy and security impact assessment for the new application, ensuring all data handling, storage, and access controls align with U.S. federal and state regulations before deployment, and integrate necessary compliance measures into the deployment plan. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, where the rapid deployment of new services might inadvertently conflict with established regulatory compliance frameworks. The pressure to innovate and deliver quickly can sometimes overshadow the meticulous process of ensuring all new infrastructure components and configurations adhere to data privacy and security mandates. The professional challenge lies in balancing agility with the non-negotiable requirement of regulatory adherence, particularly when dealing with sensitive data. Failure to do so can result in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and integrated compliance strategy. This means that before any new service is deployed, a thorough review of its data handling practices, access controls, and data residency requirements must be conducted against the relevant U.S. regulatory framework, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data, PCI DSS for payment card data, or general data privacy principles under state laws like the CCPA. This review should involve collaboration between the IT infrastructure team, legal counsel, and compliance officers. Implementing necessary security controls, data encryption, access logging, and ensuring data is stored and processed in compliance with jurisdictional requirements are paramount. This approach represents best professional practice because it embeds compliance into the operational lifecycle, preventing potential violations and demonstrating a commitment to data protection and regulatory adherence, which is a core tenet of responsible data center management under U.S. law. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to deploy the new service first and then attempt to retroactively address compliance issues. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are implicitly or explicitly mandated by many U.S. data protection regulations. This reactive stance increases the risk of data breaches, unauthorized access, and non-compliance during the interim period, leading to potential fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach is to assume that existing security measures are sufficient without a specific review for the new service. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to understand the unique data handling requirements of the new service. U.S. regulations often require specific controls tailored to the type of data being processed. Relying on generic security without verification is a direct contravention of the need for specific risk assessments and control implementations, potentially leading to non-compliance and security vulnerabilities. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of deployment over any form of compliance check, believing that the business benefits outweigh the risks. This is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. It shows a disregard for legal obligations and the trust placed in the organization to protect sensitive data. Such a decision can lead to catastrophic consequences, including substantial fines, loss of business, and criminal liability for individuals involved in making such decisions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in data center infrastructure must adopt a risk-based approach to compliance. This involves understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the data being handled, identifying potential compliance gaps early in the project lifecycle, and implementing controls to mitigate those risks. A robust decision-making process includes 1. Identifying all applicable U.S. regulations based on the type of data and the organization's industry. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment for the new service, focusing on data privacy and security. 3. Engaging relevant stakeholders, legal, compliance, security business units in the review process. 4. Designing and implementing controls that meet or exceed regulatory requirements. 5. Documenting all compliance activities and controls for audit purposes. 6. Establishing a continuous monitoring process to ensure ongoing compliance. Question 20. The risk matrix shows a high probability of service disruption due to a recurring configuration error in the network fabric. The operations team is under significant pressure to restore full functionality immediately to meet critical business deadlines. Which of the following approaches best balances immediate restoration with long-term operational stability and compliance? Option A. Apply a temporary workaround that masks the symptoms of the configuration error, allowing critical business functions to proceed while deferring the permanent fix to a later, less pressured period. Option B. Implement an emergency fix by directly modifying the configuration on the affected devices, bypassing the standard change control and testing procedures, with a commitment to document the changes retrospectively. Option C. Escalate the issue to senior management to request an exception to standard operating procedures, allowing for an expedited, but still documented and tested, emergency change. Option D. Initiate a rollback to the last known stable configuration, followed by a comprehensive root cause analysis and a planned, tested change to address the underlying configuration error. The correct answer is B. Implement an emergency fix by directly modifying the configuration on the affected devices, bypassing the standard change control and testing procedures, with a commitment to document the changes retrospectively. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in data center operations, balancing the need for rapid incident response with the imperative to maintain compliance and operational integrity. The risk matrix highlights potential disruptions, but the pressure to restore service quickly can lead to shortcuts that violate established procedures and potentially regulatory requirements. The professional challenge lies in adhering to documented processes, even under duress, to prevent further complications or breaches. The correct approach emphasizes a structured, documented, and compliant resolution process. This aligns with best practices for operational resilience and governance, which are often implicitly or explicitly mandated by regulatory frameworks governing data center operations. By following the established incident response plan, which includes root cause analysis and post-incident review, the team ensures that not only is the immediate issue resolved, but also that systemic weaknesses are identified and addressed. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of recurrence and demonstrates due diligence in managing operational risks, a key tenet of responsible data center management. An incorrect approach that bypasses the standard change control process for a critical fix, while seemingly expedient, introduces significant risks. This failure to adhere to documented procedures constitutes a breach of operational governance. It can lead to unintended consequences, such as introducing new vulnerabilities or further destabilizing the environment, which could have regulatory implications if data integrity or availability is compromised. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on restoring functionality without a thorough root cause analysis, fails to address the underlying problem. This can result in recurring incidents, impacting service-level agreements and potentially violating compliance mandates related to system stability and reliability. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed over documentation, even if the fix is successful, undermines auditability and accountability. Without proper records, it becomes impossible to demonstrate compliance or to learn effectively from the incident, which is a critical failure in a regulated environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and procedures, especially those related to incident management and change control. This framework involves assessing the immediate impact of an incident, but critically, it also requires evaluating potential downstream consequences of any proposed resolution. When faced with pressure, it is essential to communicate the importance of following documented processes and to escalate concerns if those processes are being circumvented. The goal is always to achieve a sustainable resolution that upholds operational integrity and compliance.